What is up, everybody? I hope you are having a fantastic evening. The 49ers don't only lose in the divisional round, but they lose Robert Saleh in the process. That was late breaking news last night. My guy Sunil and I are going to break it all down next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday, which means I got my guy, So Real, Sunil, in the building. What's up, Sunil?
Jesse, we know we didn't plan this, but we're both wearing black because we're in mourning. Obviously, the season is done. And I didn't plan this, but this is how I feel. Broken.
God, I didn't expect you to go full emo on me. By the end of this, I expect you to have a front comb over going on, all black hair, maybe a pierced lip or something like that. But goodness sakes, it's interesting because just like last week, you text me before the game and you're like, what are your thoughts? I'm like, Neil, man, I got a feeling we're going to figure out a way to win this one. And then talking about being broken and having shattered dreams, it took about 13 seconds for me to realize that, oh my gosh, we're going to get smoked today. And that's exactly what happened. So yeah, not a great way to end the season for sure.
It wasn't a great, and I was talking a little bit about this before we started the stream. Like, we obviously our brain looks at it and we're like, the injury riddled team, just lost Kittle, Fred Warner, all of our stars aren't there. But as a fan, man, you still have this belief and you still like just hope. And we're doing so many of the fans that I talk to, friends that are 49ers fans, man, we're all trying to reverse jinx. Like, it's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen, all this kind of stuff. But we still believed, man. And the minute the game started getting away, man, I was just crushed. I was telling you, I couldn't even watch the games the next day. I didn't even, finish the whole game. I was just so sad and depressed. And I was just like, let me go watch some Mayor of Kingstown or something like that to get my mind off of the brutality of what just happened.
That was the earliest I've started a post-game show in my entire life. There was about 8 minutes left on the clock, and I was like, yeah, we're getting this thing going. It was absolutely crazy. And then come to find out, it just keeps getting worse. First of all, on the roundtable tonight, I got to deliver a poem that I've written for Sam Darnold because I lost a bet. So that's number one. But two, come to find out, this is the worst loss in divisional round history for any team. Ugh, absolutely embarrassing.
You know what's funny is once they ran back in the first 13 seconds they ran the kickoff, I was like, maybe this is gonna be like the Super Bowl where I think it was Indy versus the Bears, where Hester ran it back on the initial kickoff, and I was like, then Indy came out and just smashed them. I was like, all right, this is what it's gonna be. Then when the 49ers couldn't drive the ball or score a touchdown, I was like, oh, it's not going to be that type of game.
Yeah, it's a little rough. Yeah, Coach and I had a good time last night. It's funny because I actually titled the stream the way I did before we even went live because I knew it was going to get contentious. He and I actually talked the day before, and we were going at it on the phone. So I knew I'd be able to get him there again. So it was a lot of fun. I'm glad we were able to bring that passion through on the stream. Listen, Sunil and I disagree. I don't know that we've ever gone at it the way that Coach and I did, but it was a lot of fun. That's for sure. Well, I do got to ask your opinion though, Sunil. And this is good. We got this news earlier today. We did expect to have an answer by the end of the week. We got our answer pretty early. Robert Saleh is gone. He's gone to the Tennessee Titans. What was your initial thought when you heard Robert Saleh was gone?
I mean, I think we spoke about it a few weeks ago. The minute he got that new management team, we kind of knew, and I think we all kind of knew once he signed here initially, we knew this was going to be a 1 year kind of revamp his resume and become that hot commodity once again. And that's what Kyle Shanahan does, right? Coaches that come here, they end up becoming head coaches if they do well, with the 49ers. It's just a great launching pad. Um, we've seen multiple coaches do it, and he did it again. As far as, was it shocking? I think the team he selected was kind of shocking to me. I thought that I thought he would go to somewhere like the Ravens we talked about or things like that, but maybe they weren't interested in him. And the more you look at it, it's kind of like, yeah, he's been a great defensive coordinator, but the Jets stint wasn't, great. So maybe we were just kind of reaching because we love the guy that, organizations would look at him and say he's the guy for our roster. But I think he has a lot of opportunity with the Titans. We obviously wish him the best. And, him versus D'Amico 2 times a year is going to be fun to see.
Not only that, but him versus Liam Cohen, remember? Keep my name out your mouth. Like, we get to see that twice a year, too. So that's going to be actually a lot of fun. I'm going to enjoy that one.
Absolutely. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. So I'd actually kind of forgot about that until. Oh,
Did you freeze
I
or did
lost
I
you.
freeze?
I think I froze. I'm back
Oh,
though.
okay. Yeah, you're
I
back.
turned off my VPN for a minute because sometimes it slows things down, so I turned it off
Mm-hmm.
and I think it kind of reset things, but we're good. We're
Got
back.
it.
All right. So yeah, getting that twice a year, getting him versus D'Amico twice a year, that's gonna be a lot of fun. I wish him luck. I was actually talking to you remember Ian Williams from the 49ers, defensive lineman
Yeah.
with Harbaugh? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he had posted, hey, I don't understand why he would choose the Titans and not stay with the 49ers when you've got all this defensive talent coming back next year. And I actually earned a follow from him after this. So I felt pretty good about it. But I was like, listen, he can be a defensive coordinator whenever he wants. Like, he's already set in stone that if he wants to be a defensive coordinator, he will have a job for the rest of his career. You don't know how many opportunities you're going to get to be a head coach. What if the defense does worse next year? Then he doesn't ever get an opportunity. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to strike while the iron's hot. And you can look at the Tennessee Titans and on the surface say, all right, not a great job, but maybe he likes Cam Ward and maybe he likes the opportunity of having the most cap space in the NFL and the 4th overall pick so we can go get maybe an edge rusher to pair with Simmons or what have you. There is some opportunity there to be successful.
Sure.
I don't look at Tennessee as like the worst job in the world. It'll take a year or two for sure, but if things are done right and he's got to have confidence in himself, he can turn that thing around within 2 seasons. I believe that.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at that division, and it's not like there's any world beaters in there. Obviously, Jacksonville had a good season, and Houston has that defense there. But I think some of the other opportunities you saw, Arizona was another one that was really looking at him. Why would you
Mhm.
want to coach in this division, right? It's stacked, and you're talking about three teams that are kind of like elite in the NFC. You go to a division that's there for the taking. Like you said, a couple years, you could be right in the mix over there, making the playoffs on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about the fallout with the 49ers. That means they've got to hire a defensive coordinator. And I think the assumption is that Gus Bradley's just going to slide right into that job. I mean, Gus Bradley was the innovator of this defense that Shanahan loves so much. He was the assistant head coach this year. He was kind of brought in, I assume, to be the successor. They knew that essentially that Robert Saleh would be one and done, or there was a good chance of that. And so that just seems to be the assumption. First of all, do you think that that's the right move if that's what they go with? And if not, like who are the guys that you would like them to look at?
Well, I mean, I think that we've only seen one time Shanahan has reached outside of the organization for a coordinator, and that was his name's slipping my mind right
Vic
now. But
Fangio
yeah, no, not Vic.
when he tried to interview him? No.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about Wilkes. Wilkes,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah,
Came
Steve
came
Wilkes.
from
Yep.
out
Hmm.
and actually hired him, and then that was a one and done. And obviously there was a lot of that didn't go, let's say, smoothly. Not necessarily all because of Wilkes and his coaching ability, but I think that the 49ers value just the like continuity. And so I agree with you. I think Gus Bradley makes a lot of sense just because the familiarity, he's going to know how Shanahan likes things run. Obviously, he's going to have a familiarity with the players, and I think that Shanahan really values that when he's looking for a coordinator. Is it the right move? I mean, I don't think Gus Bradley is a bad option, but you look at who's out there, and you look at a guy like Jim Schwartz, who has, in Cleveland, obviously there's talent there, but the way that defense was able to just kind of keep that team afloat for how long and as many games as they have, a guy like that I think would be great. Both of us are big Brian Flores guys, which we know that Shanahan has a relationship with him. I think that there's names out there. What I would like though, Jesse, is someone that doesn't have head coaching ambition, because it's getting kind of tiresome to keep changing these coordinators year after year after year, to keep getting plucked and so on and so forth. I don't know if Gus Bradley wants to be a head coach again in the NFL, but if he's willing to just be a lifetime coordinator, that would give me more willingness to just make that move. But I think a guy like Jim Schwartz is done wanting to be a head coach. And if that's the case, I think that would be an awesome addition. But to me, I think obviously we want somebody who's capable, but somebody that doesn't want to be a head coach, I think that's what we need. You look at what Andy Reid has in his defensive coordinator. He's just going to be there forever. And I think that's what Shanahan needs, instead of constantly have to figure out who the next guy is, because I think that becomes, tiresome for him on the defensive end, and we've on the defensive side, and we've seen it, in the defenses that weren't D'Amico or Saleh. They haven't been up to par. So that's what I'd like.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because Schwartz, I look at like as a lifetime guy from here on out, but it does sound like he might end up getting that Cleveland head coaching job because they don't want to lose him. And Mike McDaniel just pulled out of that spot, and so, and on top of that, he's still under contract with Cleveland, so he would be tough to pry away. I would love to have, I would love to have Schwartz. I would love to have. Uh, Buddy over in Flores. I would love to have Flores. I think he might get the Steelers job. Raheem Morris, I would like to have, but you're right. I mean, these guys have aspirations of being head coaches. Maybe Gus Bradley does, but I highly doubt that he's ever going to be one again. He's 59 years old, and so it's kind of tough to get these jobs. Sometimes you just get pigeonholed into being a coordinator and what have you. I don't know. I have my reservations. I think they should at least bring in guys to interview. They shouldn't just hand it to Gus Bradley. And here's the reason why. It's been a long time since Gus Bradley's been an elite defensive coordinator in this league. He's had 3 seasons, so he's been a play caller for 16 seasons, defensive play caller for 16 seasons, either as a head coach or as a defensive coordinator. I'm going by points scored, by the way. I could give a rip about where you rank in yards, which is how defensive rankings typically go, is yards given up. I want to know about your points scored. 3 times his defenses have ranked in the top 10 as far as points given up out of 16 years coaching, but 3 times he's also ranked in the bottom 3 as far as points given up. So I don't know how good he is still. And I would hate for them to hire him without at least bringing in some competition to interview against it. I don't know. Maybe he'll be fine. To me, I'm not excited about Gus Bradley. He doesn't excite me like some of those other names would, but it may not be realistic to go get those guys. I totally understand. I don't know. I'm not excited about Gus Bradley just being the guy and walking into the spot, which to me, I think that's most likely what's going to end up happening here.
Yeah. It's, unfortunately, I'm a big Kyle Shanahan fan, but he does like to micromanage sometimes on the defensive side. And, you have to have the right type of personality to be able to handle that. And Gus Bradley's been in the building, so I think he probably understands that. A guy like Schwartz, that would be my first choice, to be honest, Jesse. But would he need a situation where he just feels like he has full autonomy, kind of like what they did with Saleh this year? I feel like from what I've read about how Shanahan looks at Schwartz, he might be open to that. It's just, does Schwartz want to be, you know, in San Francisco or not?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see what ends up happening with Schwartz. It's gonna be Gus Bradley. I feel like it's just what it's gonna be. I don't know. Let's say it is Gus Bradley. Are you super excited about that? Or are you just kind of like, whatever?
um, I think I think I think I'd be fine with it. He understands the system. Like I said, he has the continuity there, and I know that he's at least done the job. So
Yeah.
it's not like someone that's never been a play caller before. I just don't think that necessarily this team is going to be able to take that leap if the front office stays the same. I think that's the biggest issue. Is just I think
Mm,
this has pointed to there needs to be a shakeup. I think that Kyle Shanahan has proved that he could, you know, have a 12-win team with just not necessarily 12-win team talent. So I don't think you could get rid of him, but I think you can get rid of a GM that hasn't been able to replace his stars in multiple years when the division around him has been able to do that, you know, multiple times. So to me, I think that that's the biggest issue is the front office needs to shake up um, to show that this team is going to be on a different trajectory.
well, I mean, since we're talking about it, that was one of the questions on the docket was what needs to change. And so I know you've been pretty gung ho all year that if the 49ers didn't make it to an NFC championship or even further, that there needs to be a shakeup. And you're obviously not calling for Shanahan's head, but you do think that John Lynch probably should be relieved of his duties or be a president or something like that versus GM.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking into it, and Grant kind of stole my thunder because he put it out as tweets. But I was already looking at just the Rams and the Seahawks, right? The teams that were their Super Bowl teams, and then what their teams are right now. And you look at pretty much almost at every position group, Jesse, the star on that Super Bowl team is not the star in that position group of this team. They've replaced
Mm,
them with someone that is a new star. And that's for the Seahawks and that's for the Rams. Then you look at the 49ers and the guys we're still, we're like, oh, we're getting this talent back. It's still Nick Bosa. It's still Fred Warner. It's still George Kittle. It's still, the same guys that were, part of these previous runs, which is great. They're great talent, but where's the new young star that we've drafted that just comes in and makes opposing teams are fear him? And we haven't done that. And I think that so many people want to just be like, it's Shanahan. Shanahan has full say over everything. And it's just like, let's think about it. Do we really think that Shanahan is scouting all year plus coaching? Plus, it's just like doesn't make sense. I get so many people just hate Shanahan, but like ultimately the draft is the GM and the scouting department. The GM is the head of the scouting department. And we haven't scouted and had the drafts that are talent wise keeps this team competitive. And I feel like Kyle Shanahan as a coach has been able to make John Lynch continue to look good because he's able to coach a system that, plug and play, and you could still be very competitive. But ultimately, you're not going to be able to take that next leap unless you have some impact, game changing type talent. And John Lynch hasn't been able to do that unless he's with the success. I just haven't seen it, and I think that there's GMs out there that are doing it, and I think that's where the real shakeup needs to happen.
Well, and I still look at an organization even like Philly. I mean, we can say whatever, but they know what they're doing over there as far as picking players too, and wheeling and dealing and that type of stuff. So, here's the real kicker, and this was the crux of the argument with Coach and I last night. He's like, well, listen, we won 13 games, and that's ahead of schedule. We should be looking forward to the future. Now he also said that we're not going to make the playoffs next year, so I don't know how
Yeah.
those two things go together. But either way, you're right. We talked about the talent. The Seahawks just over the last 3 years have drafted Gray Zabel and Nicky Manwari and Byron Murphy and Devin Witherspoon and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Zach Charbonnet and Torrey Horton. And the Rams have drafted Jared Verse and Puka Nacua and Byron Young and Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk, Cam Kitchens, Terrence Ferguson, Jordan Whittington. I mean, these are good players. Some of them are elite level players that we've named there. The 49ers have drafted some good players, don't get me wrong, but there is no elite player that they've drafted over the course of that time. And the real kicker is yes, the 49ers have done the right thing, and I applauded them for this all last offseason where they cleared up a bunch of salary cap. But because they did it a year later than what I thought they should have, they didn't shave as much money as they should have. They didn't get the draft capital for some of those players that they could have. And because of that, even though they've shaved some of the salary cap off, the Seattle Seahawks, who are clearly better at drafting, are clearly the better team right now, have $45 million more than the 49ers to spend this next offseason. And the Rams, who I can say the same thing about, that they are clearly better at drafting than the 49ers, at least as of late, and are clearly currently better than the 49ers, have $25 million more than the 49ers to spend. So even though we've cut a bunch of the cap, they still have more money to spend, and they're probably going to draft better than the 49ers once again. It's going to be hard to close that gap, man. It just is. And unless you make a shakeup of some sort, now only the front office knows. Is it the GM? Is it Kyle? Who regardless of who it is, they got to pull that person from their duties. Let's say it is Kyle. It doesn't mean you have to fire him, but dude, you're no longer making the calls in the war room. We're relying on our scouts to do their job. Or if it's John Lynch, same thing. We're relying on our scouts to do their job. They cannot go into another season allowing whoever's been having the influence on these picks to be the main influence anymore, because it just has not worked for about 4 seasons now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you see what happened in Buffalo, and personally, I think that GM, I don't understand why he's still there, but you can't continue to not excel and keep thinking that, okay, next year we're going to figure it. Like, it just doesn't happen that way, right? And look, I'm Kyle Shanahan's biggest fan, and or a huge fan of Kyle Shanahan. But I even said, like, back-to-back losing seasons, he should be fired. He hasn't had that in the last like 5 seasons. He's had 4, double-digit winning seasons and stuff like that. So he's, I think, there, right? He has a quarterback that he believes in, whether you believe that that's the guy or not. He believes that that's the guy. I just think that ultimately, if we expect him now to be the best talent scout and the best at drafting and all this kind of stuff, like, it's just, that's not the way that a team is successful, right? So you got to have a GM that could draft well. And we've talked about it in depth, the inability to get premium talent in the top 3 rounds under John Lynch's as the GM. It's just pitiful, right? It's pitiful that they don't have the talent that they need. They've done well with later round picks, but even those now, Jesse, aren't turning into the stars that they used to be either. So it's like, okay, you're not drafting them in the first top 3 rounds. You're not drafting them in the later rounds. You're getting some good role players, but that's not what the other teams in our division are doing.
For sure. And Chris brings up a good point. He says, Jesse, the Rams and Seahawks will need to pay their players over the next couple of years, but that's a good problem to have. And the other thing is they're not tied to their quarterbacks either. So they're going to have that cap space cleared up. And then not only that, they draft so well that the cupboard is not going to go bare as far as young, inexpensive fast talent. Like they're gonna keep that going. So it's always this cycle of staying there and staying there. And as long as finding the quarterback's tough. Don't get me wrong, but listen, I wish the 49ers were in a situation where they had young talent that was worth paying again, because that's the problem that they had in 2019 and beyond. It was like, oh, they made it to the Super Bowl and they kind of came out of nowhere. Well, yeah, they had to pay some of those guys, but they continued to win over the next few years. And now it's like, well, who are those guys at the 49ers that you can look at and say they're going to be worth paying? Like, that's a good problem to have. I wish the 49ers had that problem. So,
Sure.
all right, let's get to some sleeper real quick. You can get a 100% deposit match of up to $100 when you use promo code LSS, the fastest growing fantasy app out there in sleeper. I made my picks already for the NFC and AFC championship. So here's what they are. Got Devontae Adams on more than 50.5 receiving yards. I got Sam Darnold on less than 234.5 passing yards. I've got Kenneth Walker scoring a touchdown. There is no Zach Charbonnet. I got to imagine he'll get in. And Jared Stidham, bless his heart, man. What a rough situation to come into. You got to start in the AFC Championship. He's definitely throwing a pick. So, with that being said, that's what I'm going with. You can tail me or you can fade me, but make sure you use promo code LSS and take advantage of that 100% deposit match along with your free $20 play when you use my promo code. All right, let's get to some super chats here, brother. Sean says, so in my opinion, the defensive draft we just had was Saleh's vision. I'm not sure why they let Saleh have the influence on the draft if they had an inclination that he was not going to be there to see their development through. This is a defensive reset. That's an interesting perspective. You do remember York coming out and being like, oh, Robert Saleh made us do it again. Like, I don't know how much of that was joking around, but I'm sure he definitely had input for sure.
Sure, he had input, but it's not that far-fetched from what the 49ers usually do in the draft. Like, if you look at their draft, most of their first-round picks are going to be defensive line guys, right? So the first ever draft pick these guys picked under this regime was a defensive lineman. They've drafted Solomon Thomas, Nick Bosa, Javon Kinlaw. So it's like, this is what they do. They like building that defensive line. So even if it might have been a lot of input from Saleh, I don't think that they would have gone a different way if he wasn't there.
Yeah, most likely not. Dazza says the sobering thought is the future looks bleak. Aging and injured stars, a constantly injured team every year, horrendous drafting, and no young standout stars, although Purdy does look like a top 15 quarterback. All right. Speaking of Purdy, J.H. Ramirez says, hey, Jesse, is Purdy worth his new contract so far in year one? No. All right. Go ahead and throw me under the bus there because you knew how I was going to answer that, so I'm sure everybody hates me for it. Tommy says, if Bradley was still a good DC, he would have already been hired. Possibly, yeah. That's a good way to look at it. Daz says, while I wouldn't fire Kyle, could we not trade him? I'm sure the Bills and Steelers would be interested. I guarantee you the Bills right now would give up their first-round pick for Kyle Shanahan. I guarantee they would do it. Now, I don't know. The hard part is, and I had this conversation, Brother Bob actually texted me and was like, hey, would you fire Kyle Shanahan this offseason? And I said, no, because there's too many teams that are looking for head coaches right now, and there's not good candidates. This is not the year to be like middling around trying to find a head coach when teams like the Ravens, Bills, Steelers, who are also storied franchises, are out there looking for head coaches. Like, you don't want to be out there swimming in that pool right now. So no, I wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't make a switch this offseason for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see how you fire Kyle Shanahan for what he did this season, right? And yeah, I mean, I think that you do. We've already talked. We do need to make a change. I just don't think it's Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Frisco Shill says there are multiple times the Niners have stated that they draft by committee. Look at the trade up to 3 to get Lance. If the draft is by committee, then how are they getting rid of Lynch? How would that help?
I mean, there's a lot of things that are said publicly that are different from what's going on behind the scenes. People I've talked to that kind of know is have some inclination of what's going on in that room is John Lynch does throw his weight around a lot more, and oftentimes that's against maybe what the scouting team is thinking about for that same player. So um, it's just who your sources are, who you believe, who you don't believe. To me, I think that if you get rid of John Lynch and you pick somebody, I preferably for me it'd be from the Howie tree from Philadelphia. You get one of those guys in here. I think that it would do wonders for this team and this roster.
Well, I think the hard part too is a lot of those minds, the Peters and some of those other guys, they're getting plucked from this front office year after year. So it's like the talent behind Lynch is also going away.
Mhm.
So it's like you might lose another guy this year, in Williams. He might be gone, and so it's like how much talent can he lose when we know he's not a true personnel guy? You start losing all the talent that helps you make these picks and puts an eye on the talent for you and scouts these guys. At some point, like it's going to be rough. So it's not getting any easier, or any better. So one of
Yeah,
the
and
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and unfortunately, why I've been pushing for this get rid of Lynch thing for a couple years now is because each draft that doesn't hit again, Jesse, like you just set this back another year, another 2 years, another 3 years, because like you mentioned, in our division, they have guys that are drafting really well. and and ultimately to me, that's one of the biggest holes that I think doesn't get talked about enough because Kyle Shanahan does so good at coaching that he's able to get this team competitive. So people are just like, well, there's the talent there. When I think it's just no Shanahan putting them in the right places, scheming them up, and things like that. But if Shanahan had better talent with the same scheme, we've seen it, right? Shanahan was able to make every single running back look like a superstar. Then you actually get a superstar running back in CMC, and you see how that elevates him to the next level. That's what I'm talking about. Shanahan takes guys and makes them look really good, but then if you give him a guy in that same system, is going to be so much better. And I just don't think there's enough of those guys on the team right now.
Yeah, this is factually incorrect. Listen, right now, Brock Purdy's not expensive, but he still counted for about 7 million more against the cap than Mac Jones did. So that's not a true statement. Just wanted to make sure to point that out. All right. Now the season's over. We talked about expectations and we kind of went through the season and all of those things. Um, how do you feel about the season in its totality, Sunil?
I mean, I thought it was an exciting season, Jesse. I loved watching, not knowing what, and the team not knowing how the outcome was going to come, and the team constantly kind of outperforming expectations based off of the talent that was still there because of all the injuries. It was a roller coaster, and it was an exciting season. And based off of everything that happened with the injuries and whatnot, I think that it proved to me that Kyle Shanahan is just an amazing coach. But overall, when I take a step back and I just look at, oh, it's another year where the 49ers fell short, and people are giving excuses where it's just like, oh, well, if they're healthy, next year is going to be different. And I feel like every single year when we fall short, that's the excuse. And it's like something needs to change. And I just hope that the team realizes that this division is getting a lot more competitive. I don't think that the 49ers have the elite roster, even when everybody's healthy, that competes with what the Rams and the Seahawks have right now. And I just hope that whomever makes the decisions, if it's York, obviously York is the final decision, but whoever's identifying and doing these assessments of what the team needs, that they understand that we can't just stand pat. We do have to shake things up. And, the status quo isn't going to get us anywhere with this division, with this conference right now.
Yeah, man, it's I was left confused, honestly, because I felt like all the way through about 13 or 14 weeks, I kept saying, I just don't know what this team is. Like, I'm not sure that they're good. I'm not sure that they're bad, but every time I felt like I had them figured out, they would do something in the opposite direction. And then when I finally started to feel good about it over the final couple weeks after they'd beaten the Bears, and then when they lost to Seattle, I was like, all right, but it was close. They beat Philly. I'm like, okay, they've exceeded expectations. And then to get stomped out in that manner against Seattle and demoralizing. I mean, in a demoralizing
No
fashion, literally
answers.
none. You just played them 2 weeks ago. I thought the adjustments would be there, and I get it. There was no George Kittle, but the first time through, George Kittle was about 50% of himself in that Week 18 matchup. Trent Williams wasn't there. Ricky Pearsall wasn't there. So I figured, all right, Jake Tonjes can be a play as good as a 50% Kittle, and then you got Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall back. Like, you'll at least they didn't even get they got worse. They didn't even get inside the 20-yard line, Sunil. Like, they couldn't even get in the red zone this time around. It just That's what threw me for a loop. The fact that literally 13 seconds in, the game was over. If
Yeah.
Seattle didn't score another point, they would have won that game 7-6. And that's crazy to me. Like, that's so unacceptable. So I don't know. I left confused because the team did have some good things, right? They showed some flashes. I really did enjoy the season overall because they showed a lot of grit. They learned how to win close games. But as far as assessing how good they really were or weren't, I don't know, man. I don't. In a regular season, like, if they had a schedule that was at least a somewhat hard schedule, would they have really made the playoffs? I'm not sure. I'm looking at how they did against the playoff teams overall, and it wasn't great. So I don't know, man. I really left more confused than anything, to be real with you.
Well, I think that the thing that is a little bit misleading is people just expect, oh, well, these guys are going to come back healthy. But how healthy are they going to come back? Some of these injuries aren't next year. You're all of a sudden back to full speed, right? How explosive is Nick Bosa going to be? How explosive is Mikhail going to be? How explosive is Fred Warner going to be? Not only are they coming off of major injuries, they're also getting older, which makes it harder to recover from injuries and so on and so forth. So, just this expectation that health is going to make this team just catch up to the rest of the division, I don't think that's accurate. There's so many question marks now with the wide receiving core, with the secondary, tight end. Like, there's just a lot of question marks that it's going to be really, really hard just to plug in all those holes. And you're once again depending on guys to be healthy for this team to compete. And that's just not a that's actually the bet is for sure they're not going to be healthy, because that's what the norm is for the 49ers. And it's not just the 49ers. Obviously, the 49ers, we dissect it and we see injuries all the time with this team, and they are one of the most injured teams. But every team's dealing with injuries, right? Every team has lost stars and things of that nature. But to be so driven, like the drop off from what our stars are to the next level, I think that's where we really lack. And I just don't know where the solution is if we are looking at past behavior to show us what the future is going to be. Like I said, the draft is where a lot of these solutions can happen. And I just don't think we have a person in charge that knows how to draft.
Yeah, and I listen. Clearly, sure, I guess, but you have a listening problem because I clearly talked about the offense and not getting inside the red zone. Last time I checked, maybe Warner and Bosa are great offensive players too, but they don't play offense for this team, and that's what left me perplexed. Is how do you score 3 points and then 2 weeks later come back against that same team and you can't even get in the red zone? And not only to mention, I mean, CMC was healthy all year. Trent Williams was healthy all year outside of the final game. Like, when you look at it, those guys are likely not going to be healthy next year, assuming that they're back. You're not going to have George Kittle next year for a big part. Bosa's coming off of a third ACL tear. Like, to act as if this team is just going to suit up, stay healthy, and things are going to be peachy keen next year, sure. I guess if that's the way that you're looking at it, I don't. I tend not to think that way, but it was more the offense that left me perplexed. But good job listening, Z. Appreciate you. All right. Let me ask you this then. Are you optimistic about the future of this team?
As constituted, no. like I said, if it's still the same regime and it's still the same, we're gonna run business as usual. I just don't see how we make up the difference. I think you put it well. Like making up that gap, I don't see what happens. Right? We are still making the same mistakes when it comes to re-signing guys. We're still drafting the same. Like there's so many just issues that other teams don't have. Like this whole situation with Brandon Ayuk, man. Like we've never seen that from another team having to deal with it like that. Just I don't know, man. For me, it's not necessarily that this team is that bad. I just think that the division that we're in is that good to where you can't just stand pat and expect to be, better next season. It just doesn't work that way. Teams are getting better all around us. And more than ever, Jesse, this is a year by year league now. It's not like, you know, 2 years ago, everybody thought Detroit was going to be this world beater by now. And now they didn't even make the
Yeah.
playoffs, right? Even the Bears right now, they're like the Cinderella story. There's no guarantee that next year they're going to be just as good.
We just saw what happened to
49ers,
Washington, right?
yeah, absolutely. Washington is a great example as well. So I look at this team and it's like, oh well, look at what we did with this year with this roster. If we just were healthy, is going to be so much better next year. It doesn't work that way, man. It's a total new season next year, total new challenges, total new obstacles to overcome. It's not guaranteed that you're going to get the same results. So to me, there's a problem in the equation that needs to be solved, and until the team identifies that and makes those changes, I just don't expect this team to be that much better than the Rams and the Seahawks next year.
Yeah, that's a pretty big gap to close. Unfortunately, the Seahawks, they're going to have some players that they're going to lose this offseason. Same with the Rams, but really that young core is pretty intact across the board. So it's going to be tough to surpass them for sure. And then, you know, we're relying on aging players. I mean, I don't know. Maybe CMC retires. Maybe he had a kid and looks at it and says, "Listen, I just had a hell of a year, but I got banged up again at the end of the year. This is it. I'll go out on top." Like, if I could see him retiring more than I could see even Trent at this point, but let's assume that he doesn't. Then those are your starters next year. Relying on them to be healthy, that's going to be pretty tough. And Z, I agree. Like, listen, they do need more talent on offense, but brother, this the offense that was rolled out there in that NFC divisional game is the same exact offense they started week one with, outside of George Kittle, and they lost him halfway, not even halfway through that game as well. So let's not forget that. And Spencer Burford was playing instead of whoever the substitute left guard was at the time to start the season, and they rotated through three of them. Like, it was the same difference. So it's not like they just lost. Everybody was injured on offense. No, that's not the way that went down, brother. They started the game with the same exact players outside of Kittle, who did leave in the first game anyways. So, I mean, it is what it is. And listen, I'm not trying to say I'm the smartest guy, but brother, you can't call me what you called me and then say some dumb shit like this. I'm sorry. That's just not gonna fly. Anyways, as far as like optimism goes, like I I can see a path of being competitive, like truly competitive in a couple years. I just when I say future, I mean immediate future, and I look at 2026, and I'm like, listen, we got to play Kansas City, we got to play the Chargers, we got to play the Broncos, the Raiders, whatever. We got to play the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Giants, who just got Harbaugh, Washington, who we know that they've got some talent there. They took a step back, but that's not going to be easy. Like, even best case scenario, in my opinion, we split in those 8 games and we go 4-4. Well, if we lose 3 within the division, that's already 7 losses. And then we still have a few games that we haven't accounted for, like the Minnesota Vikings and what have you. So I'm not super optimistic that the 49ers are going to be some threat in 2026. And so then the hope turns to 2027. And it's like, how many years until we're actually competitive for a Super Bowl again? Because Last year was year one that we weren't. This year we weren't. I'm sorry, we were never winning a Super Bowl. It just was never going to happen. So that's 2 years. If next year's year three, then it's like you're going on 4 years before you potentially have a shot to win a Super Bowl again. That's a long time, man. And we're a lot of years into this regime. And I'm not advocating to fire Kyle Shanahan, but golly, man, they got to start competing for a Super Bowl again soon. We can't just be on this 4 year drought where we're just not competitive for a Super Bowl. It can't happen.
I agree.
So, all right. Dylan says, "What's up, negative fan?" Appreciate you. He says, "Love the standards you hold the team to, Jess. Why? I've always tuned in. I appreciate you, super fan." Frisco Shill says, "The defensive side of the ball, which was run by Saleh, outperformed and came up with big plays. How does that show Kyle Shanahan did a great job this season?" I mean, I think he outperformed what he had as well. I mean, the Ayuk thing is kind of weird. And then, there was some, listen, he was without Kittle for a while. He was without, he was without a lot of guys too. Let's not act like it was just all gravy all year long. He was dealing with a healthy squad and not doing anything with it. He made things shake too. Let's give him his credit. He deserves his credit. So, anyways, all right, y'all. Have a fantastic evening. I got to go read a poem to Sam Darnold on the NFC West Roundtable. Tune in over there if you want to check that out. That's going to be a disaster. To everybody in the chat, much love. I really appreciate you. Sunil, thank you so much for doing the show with me on Tuesdays. Until next time, much love. Peace.